Hi, my name is Chancellus. Welcome to Mockup Monday number 33, and the last one for 2014. So the mockup that I have in mind for today is a little bit different than the ones that I've done before. What I want to show is something that I talked about a little bit in Twitter and kind of made some infographics to hopefully help explain it. It has to do with Bitcoin. And so the idea that I want to present to you is a way to do transferable software licenses in Bitcoin and how it is that you would go about doing that. Maybe that sounds a little bit like a dry, kind of application to do it, but hopefully what this will allow people to see is that with Bitcoin, you're able to transfer more than just these Bitcoins that can be transferred for money. You're able to transfer other kinds of entities, such as software licenses, such as shares in a company, such as perhaps service service contracts. If you have 10 support calls, you could have 10 tokens that you could then exchange for these or sell to somebody else. So that's kind of my aim for today. And in order for me to kind of present this idea, I'm not going to assume that you know anything about Bitcoin. So please don't let the Bitcoin thing turn you off. So what I want to do is talk about first, I guess I have to do this in three parts. One is, what is Bitcoin? And I won't dive deeply into this. I just want to, give you the framework that you need to understand the idea that I'm suggesting. So what is Bitcoin? What is open assets, which runs on top of Bitcoin, which allows you to exchange other kinds of tokens besides just Bitcoins? And then lastly, my idea concerning doing software licensing using Bitcoin. So let's start with the first. So this is a little graphic that I made up in Paper 53, which is a really excellent app on the iPad. So I'm not going to get into what a Bitcoin actually is, how the mining works, how the transactions work. I want to talk about Bitcoin in terms of what it means for you as a consumer. Like, how do you participate in Bitcoin? What is it? What do you have to know? And it's not really complicated from a consumer's perspective. So let's see. So the start of this is here. You can pay somebody a little bit of money, and they will give you Bitcoins. There's plenty of services that do this. One of the ones which I'm familiar with is Coinbase. So you can buy Bitcoins for some amount of money. Right now, Bitcoins are one Bitcoin is about $314. So what you would do is you'd give somebody money, and then they would give you back. When I wrote this, the amount of Bitcoins that you would get is 0.003 Bitcoins. So 3 millibit coins. And what do you actually get out of that? Because they say you have this money, but what do you have? So what they actually give you is they give you a private key for a Bitcoin address, and the key has, you can think of it as like a wallet, even though that's slightly different, but let's just talk about it as though it were. So you get this private key, and what the private key allows you to do is it allows you to spend that Bitcoins that you've been given. Along with that private key, there's a public address. So anybody who has that public address, and you can feel free to share this with whomever, can pay you. So with the public address, people can pay into that wallet. And with the private key, anyone with the private key, and hopefully that's just you, can spend money out of that wallet. So that's essentially all you need to know about what kind of Bitcoin provides. And here I've kind of shown like, okay, well, what is a public address? And it'll just kind of look like a long random string of numbers, or they can also do it as a QR code. I'm actually going to show you. Here is a legitimate Bitcoin address along with a private key. So on the right that's your public address. Anybody with that information there on the right, on the left there, the one that says share, that's your public address. That is a public address. Anybody with that can put money into that account. Now, don't do that because I'm showing you a legitimate Bitcoin address, which on the right, the thing that says secret, is the private key. So it's longer. Anybody with this information can spend from this address. This is just to show you like what they are exactly. It's just these strings that can either be shown, as numbers and letters or as these QR codes. So nobody uses this. It's just for demonstration purposes. Okay. Okay. So that's all you need to know about Bitcoin. But there's something that people have built on top of Bitcoin that allows you to do something that I think is really fascinating. And what it's called is Bitcoin open assets. And so this allows you to essentially do three kind of new things with Bitcoin. So what you can do is you can pay some tiny amount into the Bitcoins that we put in $1, right? We can pay some tiny amount of Bitcoins into another address that we make, and you can make these addresses willy-nilly. Like they're not, sacred unless they have Bitcoins in them, in which case you want to be really careful with them. But we can just create addresses whenever we like, offline. We don't even need to be online to do this. Anyway, we created a address, and using the open assets software, we can then basically imbue this new address of ours with this power to issue assets. And so what it allows you to do is, let's say that this wallet we make gets an asset issuer ID. So all the assets are different. They get an ID number. So, and let's just say that, for brevity's sake, that this asset ID is number 314. So this wallet and this wallet alone is the only one that can issue assets 314. So I can send a very, very tiny, a micro Bitcoin to Sue, which is way less than a penny. But I can send her 100 of this new asset, this asset 314. Or I could send, 2 micro Bitcoins to Bob and send him 1,000 assets. And it's I was telling my wife about this idea, and she said, "But who cares? Like, this doesn't mean anything. Like, you've just who cares? It's meaningless." And that is exactly right. These assets are completely meaningless, but the important thing is they are conserved. So when I send 100 assets to Sue, she cannot duplicate these assets. She cannot make 200 for herself or 300 for herself. She only has 100. So this ability to conserve these tokens that you've emitted, so that you can run different kinds of services, are what makes this, I think, really interesting from a business perspective. And once these tokens are out, they can be transferred. Sue, pretend that this asset 314 were concert tickets. Sue could sell these tickets. She could accept Bitcoin from somebody else, from, say, as I've shown here in this infographic, from Alex, and she accepts 3 Bitcoins, and then she sends him, 10 tickets, 10 of this asset 314. The other thing that one can do is they can verify the ownership, like that. Let's say that Sue, wants to verify that I have 90 of these assets. She can take that string. She can sign it with her private key, and then there's a signature that's generated, which is again another kind of random string of letters and digits. And using the Sue's public address, one can verify that okay, Sue did in fact make this message. And looking at her address, you can see that she does in fact have 90 of those assets. And that's a way that you can verify that a person owns an asset. Okay, so I've laid the groundwork now for hopefully you to follow me on the next step here, where we try to apply this idea of we've got Bitcoins and we've got open assets where we can create, assets of whatever type. How can we use them? So one of the ideas that I had was, what if you were to use this for doing software licenses, where I'll just start walking through it, and I think maybe it'll be become clear then. So first, let's go through kind of the cycle of what happens. First thing, you have a user and they pay you some money for a license, and inside the company there's some special wallet for your app that you're selling. Let's call it just app version 1.0. You have a license, and so the asset ID, let's say, is 415. So asset 415 is our license for app version 1.0. The company is basically making this so. They're saying this is the asset ID that we respect as a token for you having bought a license from us. So what the company does is they create a wallet and they transfer a tiny, less than a penny worth of Bitcoin to that wallet, but more importantly, they transfer that asset 415. So what they return to the user is that private key. So they return this here. They just return the private key, which incidentally doesn't look all too different from the different kinds of license keys that people will give you. So the thing that I think is neat about this is the user who's paid you money for this, they don't have to be a person who's interested in Bitcoin. They don't have to be an early adopter. They don't even have to know what Bitcoin is. All they have to do is they get this private key, and that is their license key for all they know. Like, you don't need to have them in the loop about what Bitcoin is. So the second part of this is, now that they have this license key, how to use it? Well, it's used very much conventionally to how the license is used in other apps. When app version 1.0 starts up, it asks you for a license key, or maybe you have some trial, and they enter that key there, and it's able to confirm that, oh, okay, one, do we have an asset connected to this private key? It can then basically, because you don't want to share this private key around, and you don't want other applications to be able to get at it. So what you can do from here is you can generate the public address from the private key and retain that in the application, and then every time it starts up, it can check to ensure that, okay, in fact, this asset is still present. Then we come to the point of, if you have a license upgrade that happens, suppose the company creates a new version 2.0 of their app, and then they create a new wallet with a new asset ID. Let's call it like 606. The user, pays money. They transfer their and they provide their own license key. The company can then confirm that they have the license, and then transfer that license back to themselves. And then lastly, they create a new wallet just as before, transfer that new asset in there, and then provide that license key to the user. And so far, and that basically wraps up the whole software licensing scheme. Without using Bitcoin as your backend, kind of, and then having with the ability to sell and verify and upgrade. And you're relying on the Bitcoin encryption to do all the work of making sure that these things are conserved and not like duplicated. So the last part is the part where it makes it kind of more interesting from my perspective, in that it's something that's new. Like most every software license that you have is non-transferable. You buy it for yourself and then that's it. Oftentimes there's clauses in the contract and the end user license agreement that you can't resell it. So the thing that having this as a license that's in Bitcoin means that it is inherently transferable, and this has a couple of different effects. One is, let's just talk about the kind of in terms of a legitimate effect, is if you want to resell this license, there's a third party could come in and you could provide them with essentially a marketplace where people will sell their assets for a particular price, and you could have buy orders and you could have sell orders, and this doesn't have to be facilitated by the company. You don't have to. The company selling software licenses doesn't have to get into the thing of running a marketplace to do this kind of thing. So that's one aspect of it, which is pretty cool. And I think part of the reason that we have all this piracy is because we don't actually have an aftermarket for software. If you want to buy a license for something, you generally have to buy the latest and greatest, and it's non-transferable, so you can't get your money, you can't get your money back. And this would allow for there to be a healthy marketplace of older versions of software that would be available. Another aspect of this that I think is interesting is because we are using the private key as the license key, this would really disincentivize piracy, at least so far as piracy in the respect of sharing license keys. Because think about it this way: anyone who has the private key has the ability to sell that asset, not sell, but to transfer it to whomever. So if you have a bunch of people with this that are sharing this private key with each other, any one of them, if they choose to essentially defect and say, you know what, I don't trust you guys to not take this, so I'm going to take this just so I make sure that I can continue to use this software. So by having the private key be the license key, you disincentivize that kind of piracy that relies on sharing of license keys, because anytime you share a private key, you're jeopardizing your own access to software that you've purchased. So it kind of behooves you not to share it. It behooves you to treat it secretly, the way oftentimes licensed software producers would prefer. So that is kind of just the interesting aspect of this, and maybe this sounds a little bit too kind, or that this is kind of terrible, Shane, isn't it? Because then you're offering a way for people to kind of lock down on the piracy aspect. And I think actually that there's a business case to kind of be made between, you know, do you sell things at full price with non-transferable license and only the latest and greatest, and leave no aftermarket? And I think because there is no aftermarket, that increases the amount of private piracy that you have. So, you know, you can. That's kind of a business case that you can analyze. Or do you have a different kind of marketplace where there is an aftermarket, so that people can buy your software, use it, and then sell the license to someone else, where there is a kind of back catalog of licenses for older versions that people can sell and buy, and all of these things. So, you know, and that, I believe, would cut down on the instances of piracy. Just having that, you know, aftermarket, cheaper than the actual retail offering, and might be sufficient for a lot of people's needs. So, yeah, that is kind of my idea for how it is that you know, using Bitcoin, open assets, you could have, you know, transferable software licenses. But, you know, the fact that it's software licenses isn't really the crux of it. The fact is that it could be anything. If you have something that you want to, you know, issue to people, and, you know, you will make redeemable for some kind of, you know, service or software or whatever, who knows, then this is a technology that you can use to kind of safeguard it, and not have to be the, you know, trusted single point of failure. All the burden is on you. So anyway, that's my idea, and thank you guys very much for bearing with me and hearing me out on it. And yeah, other than that, you know, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, and I'll see you guys next year. All right.